Hello guys, it's a warm welcome to Alpha Omega Daily, the channel that brings you the Alpha to Omega, or if you like the A to Z of life here in Thailand as an expat. I cover lots of different topics and in the future we're going to cover lots and lots and lots. Today we're talking about driving in Thailand, or the rules of the road in Thailand. I'm not going to go into the specific rules of the road, but I'm just going to go into my experience. I've been driving in Thailand for almost a decade now, and I've had my fair share of accidents, and I've had my fair share of mishaps. I've had my fair share of floods. I can tell you all about it in terms of how it affected me as a driver and how it affected me financially when I was involved in an accident and when I was the victim of a flood. But look, that's very specific. But just to let you know, as you probably are aware, the international rules apply in the international rules of the road apply in Thailand. That's beautiful. That's cappuccino. Excuse me. The international rules of the road apply in Thailand, but in terms of observation of those rules, it doesn't always follow suit. Again, I'm speaking from my own experience as a driver. I drive a car, I don't have a motorcycle, and by personal preference I wouldn't use a motorcycle I live in Bangkok. I would definitely not use a motorcycle in Bangkok because I've no experience of riding a motorcycle. I had no experience of riding a motorcycle prior to coming here, and this is not the place to learn. I heard on the radio this morning, but I thought before it was ranked second in the, let's say, world rankings of road fatalities, Thailand that is, but I heard on the radio this morning that it's actually ranked 9th. I don't know what that is, but 9th is, it's not a great place to be. Statistically, in the region of between 25,000 to 30,000 people die on Thai roads every year, and to put that in perspective, Thailand has a more or less the same ballpark population as the United Kingdom. United Kingdom's something like, and I stand to be corrected, but I did say ballpark, about 65 million people. Thailand might have the edge on that, maybe 68 million. Let's say more or less the same, but between 25 and 30,000 people die on the roads in Thailand every year, road fatalities. The United Kingdom has something in the region of 1,500. So you can see straight away there's a huge disparity, there's a huge difference there. My experience though, as a pedestrian, first of all, if you're standing, I'm just going to give you facts, if you're standing on a pedestrian crossing, or as they call it, the zebra crossing, some people call them pelican crossings, I don't know the difference between a pelican and a zebra crossing, but let's say you're standing at a zebra crossing in my country where I'm from, Ireland. If you're standing at a zebra crossing, the onus of responsibility is on, well, obviously on you for your own safety, but the car driver approaching the zebra crossing, he is obliged to stop and let you cross the road. If you make it obvious that you're going to do that, and you can do that with bodily gestures, like maybe put your hand out or put your toe on the road or whatever. I was always taught to put my toe on the road. In Thailand, you could be standing there till you're old and grey. Pedestrian crossings, from my experience, are just black and white lines on the road as far as the drivers are concerned, because they don't seem to stop. I use a pedestrian, when I say pedestrian crossing, zebra crossing, I use a zebra crossing. Now there's a big distinction there, obviously. The pedestrian crossings are adhered to, the rules are red light means red and green light means green and blah blah blah. But the zebra crossing, I use one every night, particularly in Wigwang Night Market, where I make my videos for my other channel, which is the Big Picture El Panorama. There it is there, the link's down below. And I have to cross that road of the night market during the course of making my videos, which is about a 2-hour time period, and I use the zebra crossing to do that. But I have to literally use the tripod I'm using now. I hold that out and I put my hand out and I indicate to the drivers to stop, and they will stop and allow me cross the road, but only if you make your presence felt. Some zebra crossings, I notice, have red flags where the pedestrian can pick up a red flag, hold it out and cross the road with the red flag, and there's a little container thing or whatever you call it, I don't know what you call it, it's something, a holder to put the red flag in again. So that's zebra crossings, so you have to make your presence felt. Walking on the roads, there's a lot of roads here, back streets, that have no footpaths. It's just a feature, and you would be well advised to walk in the facing the oncoming traffic. That's not always convenient. I was, more than once this happened to me, I came out of a 7-Eleven and literally turned, because in Thailand they drive on the left, literally turned left, so I was walking with my back to the traffic and my elbow was hit by a passing car, the mirror of a passing car. And that has happened numerous, I honestly can't tell you how many times that has happened, because there's no footpaths, and the drivers, and again this is from my experience, they don't really take heed of pedestrians. That's putting it mildly. A lot of weight is attached to the type of car you drive here. If you drive a Mercedes, big Mercedes or big BMW, this is my experience now, those drivers tend to think they own the road. You'll be driving along on the motorway and okay, you're in the fast lane. A lot of people just ride in the fast lane. Every country's the same, they ride in the fast lane. You're supposed to just overtake in the fast lane. But anyway, it's called in Ireland the overtaking lane, but people just ride in it. But if you are, let's say, careless enough to ride in the fast lane, drive in the fast lane, a guy will come along in a Mercedes behind you and he'll flash you and he'll drive up your ass. He'll drive up your ass and intimidate you to move out of the way. And driving up people's asses isn't a practice that's reserved for the drivers of big cars, Mercedes, and that more often than not people drive up my ass when I'm driving on a motorway. It doesn't happen so much on the main roads, you know, the boulevards of Bangkok, because of traffic congestion, everyone's up everyone's ass and you're not travelling at any particular speed. But driving up people's asses, not paying attention to pedestrians, not giving them any kind of leeway whatsoever, and zebra crossings, they're three of the biggies for me. Motorcycles in general, people travel on motorcycles here without helmets. They travel on motorcycles with 3, 4, 5 people on a motorcycle. If you hit a motorcyclist, generally speaking, in my experience, again I'll just say that, in my experience, you're the one that takes responsibility, because that's what happened to me. I was driving in a very busy market area at 8:30 one morning after dropping my son off to school, and I was making a right turn. Now remember, we drive on the left in Thailand. We're here in it's like this, so I'm turning left, so I have to cross the lane, the traffic, the approaching traffic. So I waited till it was free, and that's exactly what I did. I put on my indicator and I began to turn into a junction. It was a T-junction, so I was turning into the T-junction. A girl on a motorcycle decided it would be a good idea to overtake me as I was making that turn, and I hit her, or she hit me, because I was stationary at the time. I'd stopped, I'd just positioned myself to make the turn, and she came around me and hit me. And the minute it happened, she careered into a vegetable stall or a fruit stall, like something out of James Bond. All the fruit and vegetables went all over the place, and the motorcyclist disappeared under a pile of oranges or something. Thankfully she was okay, and I mean this genuinely, thankfully she was okay. But I got out of the car in shock, and the minute I stood up, all I could hear was the word farang, 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 farang. And I left my car there. With the hazard lights on, and I immediately made my way over to her. She was picked up, she stood up, she was fine. She had bruised her knee, her motorcycle was a bit scratched, but apart from that it was okay. And I won't go on and on and on, but I literally was standing there being, let's say, pointed at and shouted at that I was at fault, that I didn't turn on my, as they say in Thai, Thai Si Som, and that means the orange light, in other words the indicator, or in America you call it the traffic signal. So my argument was I didn't have to necessarily, well obviously I should do, but that wasn't the point. The point was she was overtaking me at a junction. You don't overtake at junctions. I went back to my car anyway. I had to move my car off the road, and I immediately took the hazard lights off, the orange flashing lights off, and as I did that my indicator was on. Right, that's when I noticed it was on, but that's besides the point. So cut a long story short, that evening when my wife came home from work, we went to a police station, reported the accident. They didn't seem too interested. My wife contacted my insurance company. It's all in Thai, by the way, so if you don't speak Thai you're fairly snookered in situations like this. So she contacted my insurance company, and there was a meeting organised between me, well the attendees were me, my wife, a representative from my insurance company, the girl on the motorcycle, and two other guys. One was a motorcycle taxi guy and another guy, but I wouldn't say she didn't have insurance, but she had no representation of insurance. That's another thing, a lot of motorcyclists here don't have insurance, but anyway, I'm not saying she didn't, but there you are. So they all spoke in Thai for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I was told to stand back. My wife told me to stand back and not open my mouth, which well, if I did they wouldn't understand me anyway, because I couldn't speak Thai to their level of understanding. Anyway, at the end of it, I refused to pay. I told my wife I'm not paying anything, because that's an admission of guilt. And anyway, I didn't see that I was in the wrong. If anything, we were both in the wrong. Well, I wasn't in the wrong, I was making a turn. She overtook me at a junction. So my wife handed over 3,000 Thai baht to her, to the girl, to cover her hospital expenses, which had a bruised knee. And I was asked to sign some insurance certificate or whatever it was by my insurance guy, and just to appease my wife, because she would she told me just sign the bloody thing, and I trust her emphatically, so I signed it. So that was it, done and dusted. I asked her, is that it? That's it. She accepted the 3,000 and off you go. So that's my experience of an accident in Thai. There's been other bumps and knocks, but nothing worth mentioning. But that was one that was definitely worth mentioning, and that's how it was resolved. Now, can you imagine if it was more serious? My experience here is, and the point I'm making, don't hit a motorcyclist. Because you won't be, I don't think you'll win the battle in terms of apportioning blame to them, because it seems to me to be that motorcyclists are the victims in all cases. I read once somewhere, and I didn't research it for this video, but I did read once somewhere that a motorcyclist is responsible for his or her peripheral vision, and if they're in front of you, you're responsible for everything they do. If they go like this and you hit them, it's your fault. I don't know, but that's it. That's my experience of driving in Thailand, or being a pedestrian in Thailand, or the rules of the road in general in Thailand. My advice to you, based on my experience, is if you don't have experience of riding a motorcycle from back home, don't do it here. Even if you have experience of riding a motorcycle from back home, be aware that the way they do it here is quite different to the way you probably experience it back home. Even driving a car, I would consider myself fortunate in terms of the fact that in Ireland we drive on the left, in Thailand they drive on the left, so that's one thing I didn't have to worry about. Most cars in Thailand are automatic. That's another thing you don't have to worry about in terms of changing gears. But in terms of the erratic erratic nature of their driving, of some people's driving, I would be wary. I'll just say that in Bangkok in general, driving isn't too bad. They don't drive too fast. They don't drive that erratically. They won't let you out. If you're at a junction, they just will not let you out. That's another. They just will not let you out. You got to force your way out. But apart from that, really, they don't drive so bad. I have noticed it in traveling to the provinces outside Bangkok. It's like the Wild West in terms of driving, and in some cases, you can be very, very. I'll give you an example. This wasn't outside Bangkok. This was last night. Motorcycle taxi. I took a motorcycle taxi. Motorcycle taxis here are all mopeds. They're scooters or mopeds. They call them motorsai. That's the Thai word for motorcycle. Motorsai. That's another video I'm going to make, by the way. The English words that are imported into Thai, they just cut the ends off. The motorsai is motorsai. Meter is meat. Motorcycle is motorsai. Meter is meat. Gas is ga. But I go on and on. That's another video. But I took a motorcycle taxi ride last night, about 2 kilometers on the main Ratchadapasik road, which is just behind me there. It's a big thoroughfare. It's an 8-lane boulevard, central Bangkok, and the actual surface of the road is a little bit undulating, to say the least. And excuse me, it was a white knuckle ride, and I'm 183 centimeters. It's a moped. People above 180 centimeters and mopeds don't really go well together. That's my experience. There you are. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this little jaunt. That's an old verb, a jaunt in a jaunting cart, a jaunt. Out for a jaunt, my mother used to say, let's go out for a jaunt in the car. I hope you enjoyed this little jaunt around the rules of the road and driving in Thailand and being a pedestrian in Thailand. And if you did, please click that subscribe button. Let me show your appreciation. Click the like button, click the share button, do all those wonderful things, and leave a comment, and I'll bring you back another wonderful video very soon. Thanks for joining me.